focus on areas of acute need. He has founded and developed the UK's first youth-led restorative practice project, which is awesome. Restorative justice is a big, big deal right now for revitalizing our young people, getting them out of the criminal justice system, at-risk young people, and getting them involved and engaged. So, without further delay, I'm going to ask you to put your hands together and welcome Robin.
Everybody good?
Yep.
Yeah? Excellent. So we're going to slow things down. I had 15 minutes prepared, but we're going to try and do 45. How's that going to work? First thing I'd like to ask is, can you stand up?
Yeah, I can stand up.
No, the answer would be yes or no, but you stood up. Yeah? While you're standing up, most of you. No, I really did want you to stand up. Could I now ask you to move forward, please? Let's sit at the front. Let's fill up the front. Just make this a little bit more intimate. But don't sit down, just come to the front. Please. You can leave your laptops, leave your phones, unless you're tied to them. I know some people are. And now I'd like you to listen to my instructions. I'd like you to put your right hand in the air. And I know this is not my right hand. Give it a little shape. I'd like you to make that shape with your fingers. And then I'd like you to just take that shape, put it on your chin. Now check what you did. You put it on their chin.
On the chin.
Oh. Yes.
You can sit down, sorry. Who put it on their chin? Anybody? One person. So, the lesson from that is that sometimes what you do is more important than what you say. Yeah? And that's something that I've been thinking about while I've been here. There's been loads of talking. And a lot of the time we've been talked to. And I think a lot of young people get talked to all the time. You hardly ever approach them and ask them for their help. You go to them and expect to help them. And sometimes that's the problem. I said something yesterday about how if you really want to engage young people, the only thing to do is to do something engaging. And having a conference for young people or a meeting for young people, for some young people that's engaging, and for some young people it's not, until they've been engaged. Further down the line they might like to come to a conference or a meeting. But initially, I don't think that's a good plan. So my name is Robin Lockhart. I run a social enterprise called Catalyst in Communities. We're in our 6th year now. And I set it up after having worked for a few charities. And I just found that sometimes charities were too slow. It took 6 months to make a decision. And particularly young people, they can't wait 6 months. If they want something doing and they have an idea, they want it to happen now. So as a social enterprise, as that structure is so much easier than a charity, we can function really quickly. They can have an idea, we can agree with it. We don't have to wait for a committee meeting. We don't have to wait for the minutes to be ratified. We can just go ahead and work. So we do a lot of work in London. We do some work internationally. We do lots of work around restorative justice, community development. It does say youth and community development, but when I get my cards printed again, I'm just going to put community development, because I think that's part of the problem. What do you want to know? Oh, this thing, yeah. I think part of the problem is that sometimes we separate youth from the community, and that makes our jobs harder. If we bring youth into the community, they feel included, they feel involved, and then things can start to happen much quicker. We also do community safety work, lots of conflict resolution, either between individuals or between gangs or between families or neighbourhoods, sometimes between teachers, sometimes between residents, all sorts of different work. And I'm going to talk to you today about using NLP as opposed to counselling, but we also use coaching, building young people's resilience, young people particularly when they're at risk of crime or from crime. either as victims or offenders, but I don't really like those labels. Most offenders I've ever worked with, if not all offenders I've ever worked with, are also victims first. Labelling people doesn't really help. And even labelling somebody as a young person doesn't necessarily help. I don't believe that maturity has anything to do with age. So there's lots of young people who are far more mature than me, far more able than me. And the fact that they're younger than me is irrelevant. So quite often I will approach young people on that basis. You're better than me at this, I need your help. We go into a school and we're going to work with some young people who are about to be thrown out. They're expecting us to come in and tell them what to do. You've got to stop. You've got to stop that violence, you've got to stop that behaviour, you've got to stop this, you've got to stop that. And knowing how young people think, they dig their heels in and they refuse to stop. The barrier comes up because you need to engage them fully first before they'll start to listen to you. So, I hope you're ready to go on a little journey with me. I love this quote. If you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. I think that a lot of what we achieve is to do with how we think. And for many, many years, I've been doing this sort of work. I used to work in the music industry, running some booking agency work. It was when I first came into contact with Jamaica. I used to work with a lot of reggae artists and bring them over to Europe. It wasn't my company, I worked there. And ended up running some record labels and eventually had a studio in a place called Hackney in London. It wasn't my studio again, we had shares in the studio, we worked in partnership with lots of other people. The area we worked in, the area where the studio was known then as Murder Mile. And there was more murders in that 1 mile stretch than there was in the rest of Europe. And we had a recording studio there. So guys would come and bang on the door and say, we want to make music, we heard you've got a studio, let us make music. So what we started to do was, if we had spare time, we'd let them come and record for nothing. And we started working with some local guys. They got on to maybe 3 or 4. Yes, thank you. We started working with them and they did 3 or 4 CDs in those days before MP3s and started to sell them. They ended up doing some videos, they got onto MTV, all sorts of stuff was happening for them. And then I had this one night, 4 o'clock in the morning, I was just getting ready to leave the studio and lock up, and I had this, you know that knock? The one when it can only be the police. So the young people had gone. I opened the door, and there was 3 policemen looking at me, and they said, we want to talk to you about those guys who have just left. They're a gang. And he must have seen me going grey. I went, you're not in trouble. We want to know what you've done. Because we've been watching them for 3 years. They've been working with you for 1 year, and since you met them, they're not selling drugs. What did you do? And I just didn't know what I'd done. I had to take a step back, reassess everything. All I had shown them is that there was more money to be made in selling music than there was to be made in selling drugs. Inadvertently, I wasn't a trained youth worker back then. I was working in music. From there, they gave me some more money to go and work with some guys in Tottenham. You've heard of Tottenham, where the riots in 2011 started, in London. Very close to where I live. It's the next borough to where I live. So I started to work in Tottenham with another group of young people. And what I also should explain is Tottenham and Hackney have a 3-generation long war. They don't talk. In fact, they kill each other regularly. Nobody can remember why. Some of the young people think it's to do with somebody treading on somebody else's trainers once in a club. Maybe they looked at the girlfriend something in a club. What I started to do with those 2 groups was I'd record a beat, let's say, with the guys from Hackney. And then I'd go to the guys in Tottenham and play them the beat. And they'd like it and they'd start to spit some lyrics onto that beat. They didn't know it came from Hackney. And then I'd do the same the other way. Eventually, we booked some venues. And we said to these guys, you said you wanted to be musicians. We've got a show for you in 6 months. But you're going to have to work with those guys from that other place. And at that point, all kind of madness broke out. They said, we can't do that. If I invite my friends and they invite their friends, there's going to be warfare and people will die. And I said, so don't invite your friends. It's a show. You're professional musicians now. We're going to sell tickets. We're going to advertise it, we're going to go to the media, go and do some radio interviews. It's a big venue. You're going to have to promote this proper show, like proper musicians, proper artists. So they got beyond the whole gang thing. It became about the music, not about where the artists came from. Because their thinking changed. If you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. So who's heard of NLP? Not a single hand, wow. I was accused of using NLP for the first 3 or 4 years. After that incident with the studio, I decided I wanted to do more and more work with young people. So I resigned from the studio, took my shares away, stopped making music, went back to university to study informal and community education. And as part of that course, it was a distance learning course, I had to work with young people in a youth centre. So a big change in my life, and I loved working with young people. Quite often I'd go into a school or a college at that stage and I'd deliver something. Every now and again somebody would say to me, "You've obviously studied NLP." And I didn't know what it was. From about 5 years into my career as working with young people, the funding landscape changed in the UK. We could only get money to work with young people from a point of deficit. You could no longer get money to work with young people for fun. There had to be something wrong with them. Sad, isn't it? So we could only work with young people if they were gang members, if they were drug abusers, if they were homeless, if they were from dysfunctional families. There had to be something wrong. At that point, I started to work with lots more kids who were being thrown out of school, more at the sort of the risky end. Eventually started to do some work in prisons, young people's prisons. And more regularly, people started to say to me, "You're obviously qualified in NLP." I still didn't know what it was. I had no idea what it was. So NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. You know what neuro is? Yeah, the brain. You know what linguistics is? Words. And you all know what programming is. It's not brainwashing, although it can be used for that. It's a powerful process that, like a magician might do sleight of hand, NLP practitioners do sleight of mouth. So we use words to change how people perceive something. So it's really just conversations. We have lots of meaningful conversations. We ask the right questions at the right time to get the right results. Now, the difference between NLP and counselling is like the difference between how and why. Why is a question that can just go on and on and on and on forever. And anybody who's got kids here knows that. Why is the sky blue, Daddy? It's just because it is blue. But why is it blue? Why is it called a sky? And why is the why doesn't lead anywhere? How is a very different question. So I'm concerned with how things happen. I'm not saying you should never ask why, because there are moments when why is the best question to ask. It's probably 4 years ago now, I decided I should study NLP. And I started to look at various different places I could study it. I looked at about 9 different organisations. 8 of them were saying, come and learn NLP and you can increase your sales turnover. Because salesmen use NLP, they use words to help to sell. You know, if you've ever bought a car, you felt the results, the effects of NLP. When they sit you down and they say, well, would you like a coffee, sir? Yeah, I'll have a coffee. Would you like to sign the contract before or after you've drunk the coffee? That's NLP. They're limiting your choices. So I found one organisation that wasn't just around selling, it was about using NLP techniques to promote health, happiness, and resilience and well-being. So I've been studying there for, I did nearly 4 years, on and off. You do it in little chunks. The course I chose was NLP and hypnosis. And my impression of what hypnosis was at that point was just what I'd seen on TV. And one stage show, I saw one stage show as a student when I was studying years and years ago when I was in my 20s. Hypnosis is not what you think it is. Hypnosis is not voodoo, it's not magic. It's a transformative process. It helps to bypass a part of your brain called the critical faculty. So the bit of your brain that goes, what? I ain't doing that, is the bit that hypnosis can get past. But under hypnosis, you will only do something that you would normally do If you're the sort of person who will have a couple of drinks and then get up on a chair and dance, you might do that under hypnosis. If you're the sort of person who won't, the hypnotist can't make you do that. If the hypnotist asks you to do something you don't want to do, even if you're in a deep trance, you'll just switch off. You'll go, I'm not doing it, and you'll come out of your trance. When I went to do the course, I was the first subject. He called me up to the front and put me into we put each other into a trance, because it's something that the patient, the participant, has to do themselves. The hypnotist runs a process that you choose to participate in if you want. And what impressed me about it at that point was that I relived my first birthday party. Yeah, everything. I knew the present I got. In fact, the present I got was the first image that came to me. And it felt like I was collecting a huge, big car, a toy car like this. But of course, I was one. It was a little toy car. Once I had that image, I remembered what the cake was, how it was decorated, who the guests were, what I was wearing. The whole thing came back to me. And I just thought, okay, this is powerful. So I decided I was going to go fully into that, which I did. And NLP and hypnosis are very closely linked. So Richard Bandler is an American, still around, he's in his 60s. I've done some work with him now. He was one of the co-creators of NLP. When he was putting it together in the 70s, he was a Hell's Angel. You know the Hell's Angels, the big motorbike gangs in America? He was one of them, but he was studying psychology. He's a doctor in psychology. And he decided that he was going to go and study and really, really break down the work of some of the world's best hypnotists. So he worked with a guy called Milton H. Erickson. Now, Milton Erickson was paralyzed from the neck down through polio as a child, and could only move from the head up. And what he did was he taught himself how to walk again by watching babies and his relatives learn how to walk. He broke their behavior down into each individual little chunk of behavior. How did they do it? Why is it that children, adults try things, and then they go, this is really hard, I'm not going to do it anymore. Children don't do that. Children keep trying. Imagine if you were a baby and you tried to walk and you fell down and you thought, this is really tough. Everyone else is all right doing it, but I just don't seem to be good at it, so I won't bother. Babies don't have that part of their brain. They only have an unconscious. They don't have a conscious brain. So they just keep going. They keep going. But as we grow up, that's kind of removed from us for some reason. So what hypnosis is about, and NLP is about, is accessing your unconscious now. And when you can do that, magic starts to happen. Some people think it's magic. Some people think it's voodoo. It's not. It's science. It changes people's neurology. And counselling, which is the other technique that lots of people use to work with traumatized young people or people that have had difficult circumstances, seems to work the opposite way. It's good. My mum's a child psychologist, a qualified counsellor. I'm friends with lots of counsellors. I'm not saying counselling is no good. It doesn't have the same kind of impact. Counselling is more of a why than a how. Yeah? So, if you fall down and you cut your hand, you get a physical cut in your hand, you have an innate sense that your body is going to heal that scar. Yeah? We know that, don't we? Nobody really taught us that. We just trust our body to do its thing. When you have an emotional scar, what counselling seems to me to be doing is poking around in the scar and asking you, why did it happen? When did it happen? Who did this to you? And you go over and over and over and over the pain. And just talking about it can have a therapeutic effect. Just talking about it can help, but not all the time. Some people I know personally have seen counsellors for 20 years and paid money every month or every week to see their counsellor, and after 20 years the counsellor says it's because your dad was a prat or your childhood was awful. And you're thinking, that's why I came to you, I know that. What these techniques tend to be able to do, and they don't work all the time because you have to be a willing participant, is create rapid transformational change or transformational change, because a trance state is the state that this magic happens in. So as I've got 45 minutes ish,
Well, we have to give your audience some time.
No, I was going to tell you a little story about Richard Bandler. So he told me this story himself, just to give you an illustration of the difference between the two approaches, or these other approaches. In the 70s, when Richard Bandler was a very young man, in his 20s, he was just putting together, he hadn't defined it as NLP yet, he was studying it, working out the protocols, working out the magic of it, the science of it, how these things overlap with counselling and psychology and psychiatry. And at one point, one of his close friends that he'd developed a friendship with was running what in those days would have been called a mental asylum. Not a hospital, an asylum. Have you seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Jack Nicholson? One of those kind of places. That's the impression he gave me anyway. And they had a patient in there who had been there for 15 years, who was delusional. He'd been treated with drugs. He'd even had that electric shock therapy on his brain, because he said he was Jesus. And every 6 months they'd review it, and he'd go, I am Jesus, what are you talking about? And they'd give him more drugs or give him more electric shock therapy, and they kept him in for 15 years. So this guy didn't know what to do with this man. And he said to Richard Bandler, could you please just come and see him? So Richard Bandler, being the renegade practitioner that he is, said, yeah, of course I'll come and see Jesus, but I want to come on Good Friday. I hope the camera's on that lady there. Anyway, the story goes that he met Jesus, and I'll just hallucinate Jesus here for you. I can't believe I'm actually able to meet with you, Jesus, and I mean, my mum is a keen follower of yours, and she just not, is it okay to shake your hand? I don't know whether I should ever really wash again. Oh, Jesus, I don't know what we can... Wow. So, anyway, Jesus, let's get on with this this discussion we're supposed to be having. Could you stand up for me? And obviously the conversation went on a bit longer. So Jesus stood up and he said, could you just hold your hands out like that? Some of you know what's coming next. And at that point, the guards came and said, visiting time is over, Mr. Bandler. And he said, Jesus, I haven't done half of what I wanted to do today. Can I come back this afternoon? And Jesus said to him, of course, my son. Of course. So he came back, he said to him before that, he said, could I bring 2 friends? And Jesus said to the guards, is that okay? And the guards said, yeah, okay. Because they were in on the thing. So that afternoon he came back, and he said to Jesus, where were we? And Jesus went, I was standing up. So he said, oh yeah, stand up. So he got him back into that position. And he said, oh, before you do that, could you just take your shoes and socks off? So he did. And then he got a pen, and he put a dot in the middle of each palm, and he put a dot in the middle of each foot. And Jesus said to him, I thought you were bringing your friends today. This afternoon, sorry. And he went, yeah, I did look. If you look out the window behind you, they're there. So Jesus turned round, and there was 2 guys dressed in a costume from that kind of era, banging a big cross into the ground. And the guy said, I'm not Jesus. There, bang, like that. He left drug-free 15 days later. He'd been in prison, in the asylum for 15 years. So it's a different approach that tends to have different results, but it causes quick results. When it works, it causes quick results. So Richard Bandler described it as an attitude and a methodology that leaves behind a trail of techniques. Now, I've read that hundreds of times and I still can't really make sense of it. It's an attitude and a methodology, so that makes sense. And it leaves behind it a trail of techniques. So the attitude is to have childlike, insatiable curiosity about your subjects. Be experimental. And one of the key things is act as if. Act as if what you're doing is going to work. Act as if you already have the engagement. Act as if you've already cured the illness. The methodology is modelling. Now, when I was studying NLP, we were asked to do modelling. What they mean by modelling is taking somebody else who is the best at whatever behaviour it is you're trying to emulate, breaking it down into tiny, tiny, tiny little chunks to work out exactly what it is that they do. The theory being that if you follow that same thing, that same technique, you'll be able to do it. So I met a guy who worked with somebody who had never kicked a football in his life. Yeah? Together, they modelled a professional footballer's behaviour, and within 6 weeks, the kid who had never kicked a football got signed to a football club. Because he modelled the behaviour. He broke the behaviour down into tiny, tiny, tiny little chunks and was able to then emulate it. When I did my modelling project, it was nothing that spectacular. I modelled how to bake. I'm rubbish at baking, my wife is fantastic at baking. So I went into the kitchen with her and I broke it down into tiny little chunks. So why do you choose that flour? Why? I've noticed you stir clockwise, why don't you stir anti-clockwise? Every little tiny, tiny, tiny thing, even things you think are irrelevant. When I asked my wife, what is the special ingredient that makes a cake work? Because when she bakes, it seems to work. And she went, what, apart from the actual ingredients? I was like, yeah, there's something special. Because you can make, I could follow you exactly, and I could make a cake that was horrible. You know, what she said to me was, it's the music I listen to while I'm baking, and love. If you're cooking, you should cook with love. That becomes an extra ingredient in the thing that you're cooking. And the people that eat it get part of that, just like they get the eggs and the flour and the sugar. So when you're modelling somebody, you're looking at their physiology. You're looking at the language they use. You're looking at filter patterns, and I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by filter patterns. But briefly, we filter information. So how many senses do we have? I've given you a clue. People say we have 5. There's 5 that we're allowed to talk about. I believe there's other ones. We all know there are other ones. Through those 5 senses, we get so much information that if we were to take notice of all of it, all of the time, we would all be in one of those institutions that Jesus was in. So that's what a filter pattern is. We filter out information all the time. And we develop strategies for how to live our lives. The techniques that we have, so the swish is a technique for just getting rid of something. Fast phobia model is another technique. Now the fast phobia model, I've seen somebody with intense, a proper phobia of spiders. In fact, she'd had it for 35 years and it took 35 minutes to remove it. For 35 years, she hadn't been able to function properly because of her intense fear of spiders. She hadn't been to her sister's house for 20 years because her sister had a dog, and she left the back door open, and in her head that meant spiders are coming into the house. Can't do it, I can't go there, I can't go there. So she just didn't go there. So the guy that introduced us was saying that when they were working with her, it was a room like this, somebody at the front, lots of people there, but they were all there to deal with a problem. And one of the things that we say in NLP is that the presenting problem is never really the problem. And that strikes me as really true. So if I'm working with a young person who's violent, most of the other professionals who they've encountered will say, well, violence is your problem, so you've got to stop being violent. If that young man's whole identity is as a thug in a gang, he can only be violent until he can change his identity. And just saying to him, you must stop, you must stop, you must stop, is never going to work. He'll dig his heels in and you'll probably make him more angry and more violent. So that room, where there was these people all looking to solve a problem, the guy at the front went around and said, what are you here for? What problem have you got that you want to solve? Sorry, that wasn't fair. Oh, what was it? You did say something.
Cheating.
Cheating? What, at games or?
Tests.
Oh, cheating in tests, yeah. That's what she means. Anyway, in that room, loads of people put their hands up. There was somebody with a fear of flying, there was somebody with fear of failure, lots of people with fear of success, which is really common. They end up self-sabotaging their lives. But the biggest group there were the people with the fear of spiders. So the guy said, we'll work with the people who've got the fear of spiders first. And then he turned around, went into his bag, and took out a Tupperware box. You know Tupperware? You have Tupperware here? Yeah. In that box was some leaves and some twigs and stuff. And one woman got up and ran out of the room. So he said, look, you lot have got a fear of spiders. She has a phobia, so she's my subject. She wouldn't come into the room. The guy went to the back of the room, opened the door, said, are you going to come in? She was like, no. She was sweating, and you could see her physiology had changed. Yeah? She was in intense fear. So he went back to the room, he took the Tupperware box, so he opened it, tipped it on the floor. There were no spiders. There was leaves and twigs. But the woman had run out of the room and had a physiological panic attack. So he went back to the back of the room, told the woman that there are no spiders in there. What are you doing out here? I thought you were afraid of spiders. She was like, I am. But there are none. So then he said to her, you're actually not afraid of spiders. You're afraid of the thought of a spider, which is a different thing. She put her head into the room and said to the whole room, are there any spiders? He says there's no spiders. And the whole room said there's no spiders. So she came back in and he said, do you want to get rid of this fear? I can see it's really impacting you. You said it's affected you for 35 years. You haven't been to your sister's house for 20 years. So she came to the front, she sat down. He then ran the fast phobia model and some trance work, some hypnosis, during which she discovered why. I know I said not to use that word why, but she discovered that as a baby in her cot, she's lying in her cot, a spider had fallen from the ceiling onto her face. She didn't know that until she went into the trance and he was able to bring that out of her unconscious mind during the process. So what he said to her is, when you think about spiders, because her problem is the thinking about spiders, not the spiders, how do you think about them? This is the how, this is the insatiable curiosity. How do you think about a spider? She said, what do you mean? And he said, well look, most people think in words or pictures. Some people get sound, some people get smell, some people get tastes, all sorts of other things. And you get bits of those all the time. And she said, no, it's a picture. Straight away, no hesitation, it's a picture. And he went, okay, what kind of a picture? And again she said, what do you mean? He said, well, you can have colour pictures, you can have black and white pictures, you can have moving pictures or still pictures. And she said, it's a colour picture. Full colour picture. Life colour. And it's moving. Okay. Has it got a frame on it? Or has it got like a panoramic view? So as you turn, you see the picture all the way around. No, it's panoramic. So the guy said to her, okay. And it's moving. So he said, okay, so freeze it. Pause the picture in your mind. She was a bit confused, but she went along with it. She really wanted to get rid of this phobia. So she paused it. He then said, take the colour away. Like on a TV when you change the colour settings. So she made it black and white. And he said, and where is this picture? She went, it's right in front of my face. And he said, well, so move it to the back of the room. So she moved it to the back of the room. And he said, are you feeling a little bit better about this thing now? And she was like, well, a little bit. He said, well, if it's still causing you problems, shrink it. Make it smaller. And when you're feeling okay about it, let me know. So she sat there. This is all in her head. This is not real. It's all in her head. She said, okay, I've shrunk it now. I feel a little bit better about it. He said, well, what size is it? She said, it's about the size of a postcard. He said, okay. Well, if you feel okay to do this, why don't you bring it closer? And as you bring it closer, shrink it even more. By the time it reaches where we are here at the front, I want it to be the size of a stamp. So she sat there. She's doing this in her head. The rest of the room is just watching. She went, okay. Yeah, so it's a stamp now. It's right here. He said, so put the stamp on my hand and shrink it down to the size of a grain of sand. So she went, okay, I've done that. And he just went, and then she came out of her trance. And he said, how do you feel about spiders? And she said, well, I feel better about spiders, but I'm not really sure. So one thing is that we always test whether we've had the impact that we wanted. So he said, do you want to test it? And she was like, okay. You don't have to, I can give you the fear back. She was like, no. So during this process, his colleague had been in the garden and had collected 3 spiders, which he put on her hand. And she was fine. She looked at them and just went, why have I been so stupid? That took 35 minutes. to reverse 35 years of phobia. Counselling would have poked and poked and poked and prodded and prodded and prodded. It may have brought up that early memory of her being in the cot and the spider falling on her face, but they would have just talked about it. I don't know if it would have had the same desired effect. So, this is a little indication of how NLP functions. So we have the outside world, which we all call the territory, for the purposes of this talk, yeah? That's the whole of the outside world. Something happens, an event happens, an external event happens in the territory, and we're part of that territory. It's where we live, all of us. That event impacts us through those senses we spoke about. So it says there, 2 million or more bits per second are received by our senses. And as I said, if we took notice of all of that information, we would go insane. So we delete it, we distort it, and we generalize it to make sense of it. We filter it. VAK stands for visual, audio, or kinesthetic. So some people have a preference for visual things, pictures. Some people have a preference for audio things like sounds, and some people prefer to work on a basis of kinesthetic, feeling, touching and feeling things. That's how we filter things. We also filter things through our language. So if you're a visual person, you might say to people, do you see what I mean? Yeah? An audio person might say, oh, I hear what you're saying. Yeah? You understanding this now? Are you feeling it? Because that would be a kinesthetic thing. Yeah? Our memories are filters. And one thing that really has a quick impact with young people, when I'm trying to get them through a problem, into a solution, and into a successful phase of their life, I'll say to them, what memories do you have of your future? What memories do you have of your future? Did you hear that? She doesn't have any because she hasn't lived the future yet. Who's ever had a future memory? What was it?
I've actually seen myself on a stage with a potential that starting to speak to me.
I don't remember.
I'm just thinking that somewhere in my spirit I travel, and that's what I saw. So I'm just thinking it's a memory of me traveling to the future. Sounds crazy, but that's what it is.
Does it sound crazy?
Yes.
To some people that might sound crazy. We all have future memories. So I must remember when I get home tonight to... That's a future memory. Yeah? At the weekend I mustn't forget. I've got to remember to do... That's a future memory.
So that's what they call deja vu? That's what they term deja vu?
That kind, some people say that's what deja vu is, yeah. So when we have a memory, people tend to think of the... Sorry? I've got 45 minutes. Okay. Cool. No problem. I could go all day. So a specific part of your brain fires up when you have a memory, when your memory is activated, and that same part of your brain fires up when you activate a future memory. So if young people could get into, rather than being, I'm killer and I'm the biggest bad man in the whole of this area, if they could get into, well, by the time I'm 20, I'd like to actually be a businessman and a father. If they, rather than just having that as a vision or a hope or a goal or a dream, if they could embed that as a future memory, do you think it's more likely or less likely to happen? It has to happen. It has to happen. If it's there as a future memory, it can't not happen. It's on your pathway, it's embedded as a future memory. We have values and beliefs, and these things they inform our decisions. Now, we question all of that. That creates what we call an internal representation, which creates our map of the world. And we all have our own map of the world based on the events that we have experienced in our territory. Now, everybody in this room, I think, is blessed with sight. So you see the world through your own eyes. So your map of the world has to be different from my map of the world, because I haven't lived your life, I haven't had your experiences. And we both think we're right. But we're not. We've just got different views of the world. Neither one is right, neither one is wrong. They're just different. And until you can change somebody's map of the world, you can't change their behaviour. That affects your state, which in turn affects all the internal representations, your whole physiology, and that is what creates behaviour. If your map of the world is that everybody from that area is going to kill me, That's what you will find. That's what you will see. That's what will happen. Until you change your map of the world. So are you at the cause or are you at the effect? I'm going to breeze through this. This is some of the technical stuff about NLP. Results versus excuses. Dealing with what actually is rather than making an excuse as to why something is. The connection between the mind and the body. I mean, scientists right now, we're at a very important time in science where they are discovering the link between what we think and the link between how our body is. There's a direct message that comes from your brain to every cell and from every cell to your brain. It's a two-way communication. We didn't know that until very recently. So Deepak Chopra, I'm sure you've heard of, every cell is eavesdropping on your internal dialogue. If you're telling yourself you're ill, you'll become ill. Somebody said to me once, I think I'm ill. And I said, well, think you're well. And your perception is your projection. If you see something in another person, it's because it's in you. And you've projected it onto them. That's why you recognize it. That's why you know it. So your perception is your projection. And take responsibility. Who's got you to this point? If you're in a world of pain and a horrible situation, it's not the government's fault. It's not the neighbour's fault. It's your fault. If you can get people to take 100% responsibility, things start to happen. So what's this? There's a clue at the top, no? It's a world map, yeah? Is this the one you get shown in school in the Caribbean? Yeah? Okay. What's that white thing at the top there? Greenland. And it says Denmark because Denmark own it. So according to this map, Greenland is about the same size as Africa, yeah? Bigger than Australia, bigger than South America, yeah? This is the map they've been showing us for years. We believe in this map, don't we? Part of our belief system. Look at the UK. So UK is probably half the size of India. Yeah? That's a children's one, showing the same things. So in 1974, Dr. Arno Peters developed a map which actually is based on square meterage. This is the truth. Look at Greenland. Where's the UK? You can hardly see the UK. So why was that? Why is it that that map's so different? Something that you guys know in the Caribbean very, very well. I believe it was to do with colonialisation. The UK was at the centre of the other map because they made that map. And if the UK was trying to take over a country, they wanted that country to feel small. Yeah, look at Africa's a continent. Look at the size of Africa. The world is basically Africa and a few other little places. Who do you think made that map? Australia. Most people see that map and goes upside down. It's not upside down. How can it be upside down? We're on a globe spinning through space. There is no top, there is no bottom, there is no north, south, east or west. There is no up, there is no down. All of those things are belief things. It's belief systems that we have that are not real. There is no north in space, and we're in space. There's the two maps together, very, very different. So we've been walking around believing in that one, and the reality is that one. How long does it take to get from that easternmost, I know I said there's no east, but you know what I mean, the far right point of Russia to Alaska? How far is it? Do you think? Is it a long way?
It used to be, there's a bridge.
It's 20-something miles, but most people think you have to travel all the way across the world. You go the other way. It's a globe. So this is a little bit of information about my map of the world. So that's me. That's me and my second mum, Rose. And most people see me and think I'm English or British or maybe Scottish, and some of that's true. That's my house. That's my chief. So I was born in a village that was 4 hours drive from a road. In Zambia, I was the first white child they'd ever seen. And through hypnosis, I relived the blessing that this man gave me. It's a 4-hour traditional tribal blessing. And I didn't know. My parents had told me, but I didn't really know what happened. I didn't know what it was until I went into hypnosis and was able to relive it. I went beyond my first birthday. Unbelievable. This is my map of the world. I'm not saying it's the truth. I'm not saying it's right, but this is the truth. because we all have a different map of the world. That's me and my nephew, Max, whose dad is from Clarendon. Oh, I'm missing him. That's my cousin on the right there, who is half African American, whatever that phrase means, quarter Chinese, quarter white, Eastern European Jewish. That's my son in the sunglasses. That's my sister, my other son Dylan, my brother-in-law from Clarendon, and my niece. That's the cousins from New York that are all the same mixture. So what race do you believe you are?
I don't know. It's just, well, so many that I've heard about. I don't know the truth, and I don't even. Well, I'm from a place in Jamaica called Maroon in St. James.
But if you had to pick a race, what would you say it was?
Somewhere in between.
Yeah. So we cut to the quick. We are the human race, but some people believe they're the black race, some people believe they're the Asian race, some people believe they're the white race. It's a myth, it's not true. That's the rest of my family. No, it's not. What it says at the top there, could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant? If we can see through somebody else's eyes, we get a glimpse of their map of the world, and then real engagement is possible, then real change is possible. Yeah? If you change the way you see the world, you change the world you see. And if you can change the way somebody sees the world, the whole world changes for them. So if you're working with a gang member, like I do regularly, and they see themselves as a businessman suddenly, the whole world has changed. So I have to respect. These are the presuppositions. Again, we don't have to believe that they're true. We presuppose that they are and act as if they were and just see what happens. So if I work with somebody, I have to respect their map of the world. Otherwise, I can't engage with them. If they tell me, I killed him because he looked at me funny, and I go, well, you're an idiot. The rest, I might as well not bother with the rest of the work. I have to go, yeah, he deserved it. And then talk to him and get to know him and engage with him, and then later on say to him maybe, so the punishment for looking at you funny was killing. But looking at somebody funny is killing them. You killed somebody, what's the punishment for that? Following your rules. But that can only happen if we get the engagement. The map cannot be the territory. The map is not real. Even if you had a map of Jamaica the same size as Jamaica, it isn't Jamaica. It's just a map. The mind and body are linked, we know that. People are not their behaviour. Behaviour is something you do, it's not something you are. I'm speeding through these now. We always communicate now. Only 8% of our communication is through our words. And when you study NLP, you're trained to pick up on all the other communication that people give, the leakages about how they feel, about what they've experienced. Tiny little things can give it away. Learning those techniques is what enables me to walk into a room with 12 murderers. It's coming back. The first project I ever did in a prison was 12 young murderers, all of them black guys, and me. And I was able to walk into that room and create instant rapport and create instant change. One of the guys in that room at the end of the first session broke down in tears. He stayed behind. He broke down in tears and he said to me, listen, I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again after this project, but I want you to know you've changed my life. If I'd met you when I was 8, I would have never joined a gang. I would have never done any of this. That was after a day. Behind every behaviour, there is a positive intention. So I work with a young boy who smashed an old lady's window. Not a big, huge crime. It affected the old lady really badly. She had a heart attack. His positive intention was, if he didn't smash the window, the big boys were going to beat him up. He had a positive intention. Every behaviour has a positive intention behind it. We presuppose that. And when you presuppose that, you create engagement. If I presuppose that a gang member is doing it because he wants to sell enough drugs to buy his mum a house, that's a positive intention. And anything can be accomplished if you break the task down into small enough steps. Big, big changes. This is a guy called Dilts came up with this. So these are the neuro-linguistic logical levels. Who I am, my belief system, my capabilities, what I do or have done, and my environment. That all goes together to inform your identity, your values, your meanings, strategies and states of being, which gives you your behaviour and changes your external context and your relationship to the world. Who, why, how, what, where, and when. Very important. The way we interact with our environment. That's another way of looking at it. You have the environment, which informs what you do, when you do it, how you do it, why you do it, which gives you your identity. And then beyond your identity is your relationship to whatever else you believe in, beyond us, whether that's nature or God or your family or something greater than yourself. This is yet another way of looking at it. And I see it actually as what's called a cybernetic loop. So cyber is made by man or woman. And in that loop we have our thoughts, we have our identity, we have our behaviors, and we also have chemicals that are created through our behaviors, through our thoughts. What we can't prove, and in psychology they would tell you that if you're feeling depressed, it's because you have a chemical imbalance or you inherited it genetically. They don't bring in the thought, the influence of thought. So because it's a loop, I don't know whether it's the chemical that causes the behavior or the behavior that causes the chemical. And no scientists do. They can't prove it either way. So my feeling is, well, if the thought can create the chemical, then lovely. Have those thoughts. So you can produce all the oxytocin and the serotonin and all the lovely stuff that you want, not the stuff that gives you the depression and the other anxieties. This is a bit of an experiment. I'd like you to, if you've seen this before, please remain quiet. It's going to take some focus and some attention. You're going to get some instructions. There's only one real instruction. I'll tell you it now, but you'll get it again on the film, if it works. I'm hoping it works. There's going to be two teams playing basketball, or passing basketballs. All I want you to do is to focus on the team wearing white and count how many passes they make. Yeah?
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball.
Please remain silent till the end.
How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes.
Hands up if you got 15.
But did you see the gorilla?
Hands up if you saw the gorilla. Whoa! So yeah, a gorilla walked across the screen, beat his chest, and then walked past. And what you did, if you didn't see the gorilla, what you did was you deleted it from your brain. You want to see it again? Can you wind it through just to the end? Go to the very end, it replays it. I assure you there was a man dressed as a gorilla, walked across the screen and beat his chest. I promise you. Watch.
Same video.
Yay! So normally it's about 50-50. About 50% of people don't see that gorilla. Now you've all done that. You've all gone to the fridge. Maybe when you were a kid, I remember distinctly my mum saying, "Go and get me the milk," and I walked to the fridge and said, "There is none." And she'd walk up and go, "Yes." Because I deleted it from my vision. It's gone. Now I hope you remember at the beginning of this, that quote. Remember that quote at the beginning from Henry Ford? If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So as part of my hypnosis and NLP training, I had to train myself to think that I could walk barefoot on broken glass. Oh! Why have you done that? This one's sideways. Just play it, it's alright, it's not long. Go like this. Get a different perspective. You got sound. Okay. The sound is the worst bit. When the glass pop and crack. Now, some of my colleagues on this training got halfway and broke this. And One guy looked up and smiled, then went, oh! And he had a big gash in his foot. I didn't get any more flip cuts.
I'm admiring you, Thomas.
And on that note, I think I should shut up. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
How many basketball passes were there for the white team?
15.
It was 15.
It was 15.
Okay,
You're an
let's
audio
do-
digital person. You need the data.
I was slow. I was only started halfway paying attention. That's my selective attention.
Let's give Robin another round of applause for such an informative presentation. We have about 15 minutes or so for a question and answer, probably a little bit less. But if anybody has any questions, you can come right to the front. We'll use this other mic here because I think they need the mics for recording.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yes, I just have a comment. It's a very interesting presentation. What's interesting too is like how you can train your mind to think like how you just walk on glass and
Me or
yeah,
you?
you.
No, you.
And I can do it as well.
I haven't got a special
I
mind.
just train my mind that I can come up here and say this. Yeah, this is what we do unconsciously, right? And I think a lot of us as young people, we always put ourselves down, and we always have to remind ourselves that we can do things because we don't feel, well, I can speak for myself. At times I really don't feel confident enough to do things.
Do you try hard?
I try really hard.
So there's the problem. And I'll show you how.
Show me.
Try and take this microphone out of my hand. No. I said try and take the microphone.
I just took it.
No, you just took it. That's not trying. Trying means you don't do it. And you said you try really hard to do things. If I said to you, I will try and be here at 9 a.m., you're left going, if you make a date with somebody and you say, I'll try and be at the cinema tomorrow, you're left thinking they're not coming. So don't try, do it.
Just do it.
That's the problem.
Okay, and next thing that I observe, it's you talk about it being like perception a lot, like perceiving things. But I'm kind of realist in the sense that if this is a phone, you can perceive it. It is what it is.
It's a camera, it's a computer.
I know, but yeah, there's so many things like we can. And if it's a bullet, then it's a bullet. A bullet is a bullet, and if I get hit with that, then I'm going to die, or based on where it hits me and all that.
Yeah.
So I think, like, for me, understanding this sometimes is a bit hard because of just the way I think.
It's not just the way we all think. When I started to study this, I had the same struggle. Until it really makes sense to you. When I'm helping somebody to learn something, you can't. If you learn by being told, is one thing. If you discover it for yourself, it's a whole different level of learning.
Yeah.
When you discover something for yourself, the learning is deep and permanent.
Yeah.
When you learn something just by being told it, it's more about memory
Yeah.
for me than learning.
Yeah. There's one other point. You spoke about if we don't change our will, which means that we create memories of the future, then we can't change our behavior. Which is pretty much what you just said, right? So, like I'm thinking about doing this project with young people, conflict resolution skills, and just training them in that. But also, I found that that's important, like actually really getting young people to think of their future and not just like all that foolishness that people talk about, your goals and all that. But that's all good and well, but really think and create like a memory. And I think that was important. I got that from your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes?
I just need some clarity. I think
They're recording.
They're recording though.
So they're recording.
I just need some clarity. You mentioned about behavior being motivated by positive actions or something like that. And I was wondering, you gave the example of the boy breaking the window of the car, and you said it was a positive action. But could positive be changed for maybe rational action?
It's not a positive action. He has a positive intention.
Oh, he has a, but even with a positive, so could positive intention?
It's not. So the thing is about not saying that it has to be true, but acting as if it is true. If you act as if the person you're interacting with did have a positive intention, you create engagement, so you can work together.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a slight difference in.
So it's not that you are affirming their action.
No. So I've done some work with paedophiles. Now, there's no way I can say any paedophile has any positive intention in reality. But if I want to work with him, I have to believe his map of the world. And in his map of the world, what he did was justified. So I have to take that on board and act as if it is real and is justified. I don't believe that. While it's on camera.
Good afternoon. Same thing with positive intention, as you said that it brought back a memory where I must say that my father was murdered in 2005, and I got the opportunity to speak to two persons who brought themselves to the police station to say that they were the murderers. Wow. In an instant, well, the female who was 16 years old did not know that the victim was my father. And I don't know how I got the courage to sit and talk to her, but she felt comfortable telling me that the reason, which I'm thinking is a positive intention, that they murdered him was because she was pregnant and she was not working and her boyfriend was not working. So the plan was to kill him and get the car. So I'm thinking that is the positive intention, that they wanted to take care of your unborn child.
In their map of the world.
In their map of the world. But then the positive intention, no. You see the devastating effect that it happens. In my talking to her, I'm trying to flip where she actually thought that my intention was to assist her to get off the case. So I think it was a flip, that my actually wanting information to help to solve the case. She was thinking that my intention was to assist her. So I became kind of sort of not attached to the victim at the point in time. Just to say though that I have a fear of exams. I don't know if it's a fear, if it is a fear of failure or a fear of success. I have an issue understanding. So sometimes I don't even try. I've been in an exam.
That's the easy choice, isn't it?
Yeah, not trying any at all.
And then you know why you didn't pass.
Yeah, because I didn't do it. So me trying to understand the difference between a fear of failure and a fear of success. I'm going to have, that's what I think I need to work on. And Tanya was here prodding me when you said that I'm thinking she thinks it's a fear of being successful.
Success is a big thing. You have to do the work, you have to take the responsibility, you have to stick your head up above the parapet. It's a risk. Not being successful is the easy choice. It's the sensible choice for most people. It's an easy life.
The other thing too is I've been in an exam and ended up in an hospital because of how terrible all of that takes place. The other thing though is that about 3 weeks ago, it just came to me that I think it would be good for me to get like an elevated view of myself, like a 360. I don't know how that works. I don't know if it's the same thing as hypnosis to see, because Tanya is a close friend of mine. I always make reference to her, and she thinks that I'm so much more than what I contain myself in. So maybe that 360 view.
What do you think? This is something that really struck home with me. It's none of our business what other people think. And you never know. They might tell you what they think, and it might not be true.
But
it's what you think that matters.
As I'm saying, there's a split between. So I'm fighting two. I don't know if it's a good and an evil, or it's two evils, or it's two good.
Well, just two parts.
Or two parts, but there are times when I feel that I'm more than I am, and I act as if I'm more than
we're all more than
I am.
We know we are.
But then there are times where I allow all of that to just shovel me down. So I mean, it's just one of those things where maybe this is something that I need to know.
What are you doing at lunchtime? We can deal with that. 20 minutes?
Why not?
The lunch break is an hour and a half, so you've got time.
Yeah? It's recording. Go ahead.
Hello, love the presentation. How can I know if I have a fear of success different from a fear of failure? What's the difference?
There is no real difference, it's fear.
Okay.
So that's right, so we share the same.
It's really just the same,
Yeah.
two sides of the same coin, if you like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah?
All right.
Do you want to be successful?
I'd love to be.
So if you're going to be successful, which is the most important thing for you to think about? Your past, your present, or your future?
You have to look at it in total.
Okay. Because the future doesn't exist, you know that? The future is an idea in your head. The future is an idea in your head.
Oh, okay.
And the only way to get that idea to become a reality is to deal with now. And if you make the most of now, where every time that it's now, the future will, what you've got in your head that you want to create will become real. It will become the now.
Oh, okay.
But you can't live in the past. That doesn't exist either. So I've worked with people who have had really horrible things happen once when they were 6. And they're 60 years old and it's messed up their whole life. But it happened once when they were 6. And a counsellor will keep talking about that one thing that their horrible, evil uncle did to them when they were 6. Rather than just thinking, well, what could I learn from it? I can leave the pain in the past and bring all the learning into the now and use it to create my future.
The person's always saying you need to know where you're coming from to know where you're headed.
Yes. You need to acknowledge it and recognise it, but don't keep looking there. If you want to go there, you can't be looking there.
And also, how could someone, go and study NLP?
You mean you?
Yes.
You can do, there are some online courses I can recommend if you wanted to do it online.
How would I teach myself?
I would always recommend, there's lots of books, I can give you some titles.
Yes.
But there's nothing, for me, it's studying it in a room with a few people. I did one program where there was 500 people in a room and I found it really difficult. And then the course I actually went through and did, I'm a master practitioner now, which doesn't mean I'm the best. It means I practice every day. For me, that's what mastery is. You know Bruce Lee?
Yes.
So Bruce Lee said, don't be afraid of the man that knows 10,000 kicks. Be afraid of the man that knows one kick and has practiced it 10,000 times.
Just wanted to make a comment, since we're here about youth and youth development, etc. This last week I was challenged because I'm doing my practical experience at a school in Mandeville. And I shared earlier the comment that Mr. Robinson made about not seeing young people as deficits, but seeing them as assets. And I'm into asset building. But I was challenged because at this school, I had my laptop bag and I had some money in it and my mother's phone, because she passed away in February. And it had all the pictures of her in her last, when she was in the hospital and everything. And it hurt me really badly. And I had to do a session with the kids last Friday. And I was there trying my best to think of them positively. And every child I passed, I was like, this is a potential one. This is the one that took my phone. This is the one that took my money. And it was very hard to do the session with them. And I was like, but this is what you speak about. This is what you're about. You're always. Not all of them are thieves. Not all of them took my money. Not all of them took the phone. And I'm like, really and truly. And so being here and hearing.
When are you next in that school?
Monday.
Sit them all down. This is advice. I don't normally give advice. I know we've got to stop. The same happened to a colleague of mine. We were delivering a program it was in Tottenham again, and somebody took money out of her bag. And then came back, while we were having a break, and then came back, the whole group came back, so we knew it was one of them. We didn't mention that the money had been taken. We did a talk about how sometimes there are victims and perpetrators in the same room. And whether the perpetrator ever owns up or not, he knows or she knows. And when you have knowledge that you've done wrong, it eats you up on the inside. And eventually, this young man who was 18, gang member, burst into tears. Said, I'm sorry, I need my money back. Just let them know that you know.
Right. Because I asked the school, I was with the Dean of Discipline yesterday, if I could address you know, the school, and,
Yeah.
you know, let them know that this has hurt me
Yeah.
deeply,
Yeah.
you know.
It's a tough one to deal with because they're all under suspicion. Talk to them all one by one if you have to. Look into their eyes and see. You'll see who it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So my one closing comment is: young people do not care who you are until they know you care.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Okay, everyone, that concludes our session. Lunch is ready. I think it has proven successful. Like I said at the beginning, we have now an opportunity to go more into the session. So thank you guys very much.